Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for starting your week with us tonight. And we start tonight with an oldie but a goodie, Donald Trump's taxes. People protested in more than 150 cities over the weekend, calling for the release of those tax returns. He is the first person in more than 40 years to run for president without making them public. The president did not take too kindly to the rallies. Here's what our commander-in-chief tweeted. I did what was an almost impossible thing to do for a Republican. Easily won the Electoral College. Now tax returns are brought up again. Someone should look into who paid for the small organized rallies yesterday. The election is over. And if you miss it, there was an exclamation point. And speaking of the election, here is what he had to say about his taxes when he was candidate Trump.
As far as the taxes are concerned, I'm being audited. Until that audit's done, and I don't think anybody would blame me, I'm not giving it.
He did say, though, when the audit was over, he put those returns out there. Critics are saying he does have something to hide. That's the only explanation for why we haven't seen him. And they're saying the same thing about this latest news that was announced on Good Friday, right before the holiday weekend. The White House is cutting off public access to the visitors' logs. That means we will not know who's coming and going from what is called the White House, which is the people's house. Now, the administration says it's for national security, but prior presidents, they weren't worried about that when the logs were made public. Let's bring in our panel right now to unpack this. Jeanne Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College and also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Techonomics. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Guys, Jeanne, thank you very much. Hope you had a nice holiday weekend. Let's just jump into it. Now, we're going to get into next segment all the promises versus the realities and all the complete, not just minor flip-flops, but 180 degrees that he's taken on issues.
Let's take up the rest of the show.
Really, I mean, it's shocking when you see it and we go through it, but this is, I mean, we can't know. Forget about what's in the returns and the conflict of interest. We can't know who's coming and going from the White House, really?
And this from somebody who accused President Obama of not being transparent in a series of tweets going back several years. But, you know, when it comes to the visitor's log and it comes to his taxes, he is the first president not to do this in 40 years, but he's not going to be the last unless somebody passes a piece of legislation requiring this. We're going to see more of the same because, you know what, he's been successful. He did what everybody thought was impossible. They said if you don't release, remember with Mitt Romney, you're not going to make it. He did. And I think the same thing is true with the visitor logs. Until you get a piece of legislation or until a judge speaks, those things aren't going to be released, and the most people are going to be able to do is criticize him for not being transparent, criticize him for being a hypocrite, but you know what? He's been doing this all along. He's been criticized for that, and it hasn't stuck to him. So I don't think it's going to have much play.
Andrew, I hear it, but we've had every president. They'll open the books up. What's the rationale for why this president says we don't have a right to know who's coming and going for the White House?
They say it's a national security issue and to protect the people who are coming to the White House, and that they would have to go back through the logs anyway and readjust them to basically black out or otherwise hide the names of the people who would be under risk from national security. Now, it's worth pointing out that the Obama administration did that. They basically would go through and they would black out the names of people from the visitor logs who aren't, so, you know, who would be a national security issue. The Trump White House is saying, well, look, the Obama White House wasn't completely transparent about this, so we're not going to release any of it. It's almost like saying a little transparency is not as good as none. You know,
and Dominic, there's this, I'm sure people out there saying, oh, Rich, you and media guys, it's just because you want to be able to know.
No.
It's not the case. This isn't some petty little thing.
I agree
it
with
matters,
you.
right?
Of course it matters, Richard. A quick story that Al Sharpton told me a while ago. Like our current president, who reportedly doesn't sleep much at night, Bill Clinton was exactly the same way. So what would Bill Clinton do at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? Reverend Al Sharpton told me that several times him and Jesse Jackson would be summoned to the White House at 3 o'clock in the morning to meet with Bill Clinton. The only folks that would be up would be the cooks to service the president, and they would have these private meetings. You, I, the professor, everybody knows the public has a right to know. If you're meeting with these individuals, we have a right to know.
It's a different issue completely, but Bill de Blasio, forever and still to this point, doesn't take questions from the media. This is a totally different issue, but it's not a preference thing. You have a responsibility. It's not your house. It's the people's house. And for anybody who, after only 80 days, has questionable ties, questionable context, potential conflicts of interest, and the rest. This stuff matters. And just for me, at least, you know, for example, remember how we're going to drain the swamp and all the rest? Now we learn, Andrew, that all those lobbying restrictions, remember how nobody in his White House was going to be able to lobby? He was going to do something like no president before it ever done. He's gone the complete other way. Now he's letting guys in his administration basically do what they want. He's giving lobbyists a more pronounced place at the table. Listen, we're going to do the poll numbers. People don't trust him by record numbers, but they don't trust him even from 2 months ago. Does this count at a certain point? Does this add up? Does it matter?
I mean, that's really the $64 million question. I think it matters less to the people who are already supporting Trump. They're the ones who aren't going to care if he flip-flops on his positions. They're not going to care about what he tweets. They're the people who are already on the Trump train. I think for that group in the middle, the couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary, so I pulled the lever for Trump crowd, it might have an impact. But this is sort of this is not an issue that impacts people directly, and a lot of people don't connect to it. And so I'm going to take one last stab at trying to connect people to it. You remember Devin Nunes, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee for the House? He met with the White House, said, I have this new information that the president needs to know. Where did he get the information from? He got it from the White House. How did we find out that he got it from the White House? A visitor's log that showed him going into the grounds, and it showed who he met with. In the same spirit of that, President Trump, when he was deflecting on all these meetings with the Russian ambassador, tweeted out how many times the Russian ambassador visited the Obama White House. How did they know that? From the White House visitor logs. So this is clearly an administration that knows the value of these logs and still wants to hide them.
And also, Jeannie, it's this open-ended question before all these other questions, scandals, whatever you want to come up with, is he trying to profit from his position? If people are coming in that have business before Congress, or people that are coming in that are looking to open up commercial development overseas, and they're brought in, we don't know who they are, then we, the people, won't know any better to say, wait a second, why is our BS detector going on here right now? Why is he giving this particular nation preferential treatment? Or why is he giving this particular developer, maybe they'll get a piece of whatever infrastructure comes about. This stuff matters. And I know it's a small universe that's talking about it right now, but I also think it pokes a finger in the eye of the press who's looking for a story. And he's asking for it, that somebody's not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's going to be the trend going forward. He will not get a pass when somebody else might have, because he's seen as being oily on these kind of things.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's really questionable, this national security defense. And a judge is going to have to look at that if and when a lawsuit is filed for freedom of information and say, are there really national security issues that you can't handle, as Andrew mentioned, by simply going through the log and blacking out? You know, you can't say national security, so everything's off the table. You have to, you know, very, very carefully and narrowly delete or remove those things that potentially could be harmful to the country, and you give the information to the public. That's the rest. So they can't make these blanket national security claims. So I'm not sure this is going to stand up long term. And I think the danger for him is not so much each of these issues, but what becomes a narrative about his presidency, which that he's hiding, he's not transparent, he was criticizing Obama for things and he's doing the same thing. Those things do add up. Maybe not to the 36% that voted for him, but to the people in the middle, those things will add up, and it's going to be a problem for him.
Remember I said he loved leaks and he loved WikiLeaks and all the rest here? This is the kind of information that always leaks out. It always gets out if somebody got in there. I'll be curious if he's still loving the leaks then. All right, coming up next. Remember when George H.W. Bush said, read my lips, no new taxes? Then he hiked the taxes anyway? Well, many people say that is the reason voters told him to take a hike. President Trump, he's already made a slew of reversals, even more dramatic than that, you could argue. The question is, will it catch up with him? We'll be right back.